Parents pleaded, "Don't write about us." And I smiled, knowing I already had. Changing names, not the patterns. The three of us were at the dining table, the same scratched one from my childhood. But now there was an iPad in the middle like some kind of unwanted guest. My post glowed on the screen, anonymous username at the top, a few thousand upvotes, and a comment count my mum had already scrolled through with tight, furious fingers. Her lipstick had bled slightly into the lines around her mouth. My dad sat stiff-backed at the head of the table, arms folded so tight over his chest his knuckles pressed white against his shirt. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears, but my voice came out disturbingly calm. It was a Thursday night when they found my writing. Thursdays used to be family dinner night before I moved out. I still came over every second week to keep the peace. This time, when I walked in, there was no smell of garlic or onions, no pot on the stove, just the sour tang of burnt coffee and a kind of crackling silence that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Mum was sitting at the table with the iPad in front of her, like she was guarding evidence. Dad didn't get up to hug me. He just jerked his chin at the chair opposite. "Sit," he said. If this was a Reddit post, I'd probably start with something like, I, 29F. Write anonymously online about my family and my parents, mid-50s. Found it and now things are complicated. But it feels weird putting tidy brackets around a life that has never felt tidy. So I'm just going to spill it and hope it makes sense to someone, even if it doesn't fully make sense to me yet. I've always written. When I was a kid, it was diaries with cheap locks that Mum would accidentally read and then confront me about. "You wrote that I was mean," she'd say, holding my notebook like it was contraband. "After everything I do for you, you should be grateful." I learned early to switch from ink to code. I wrote whole pages about the dragon and the queen and the quiet princess instead of Dad, Mom, and me. Felt safer that way. When they fought, I'd sit in my room with my back against the door and scribble dialogue I wished they'd say instead of what they were actually yelling. Apologies, soft questions. "Are you okay?" Instead of "You're unbelievable," and "You're just like your father." As a teenager, English teachers told me I was good with words. One of them, Mr. Patel, gave us an assignment. Write about a place you feel safe. I handed in a story about a library that stayed open all night, where the shelves whispered your name and the chairs were always warm. He wrote in red pen at the bottom, "You deserve this place in real life too." At home, when he called one night to say he was recommending me for a writing program, Mum rolled her eyes. "As long as you don't write about us," she said, half laughing, half serious. Dad snorted and added, "Yeah, we don't need you airing our laundry. Fiction is fine. Make it up." They always said it like a joke. The way you say, "Don't make me the bad guy," when someone takes a photo, but there was a brittle edge to it even then. Fast forward a decade and change. I move out at 21 to a crappy share house with mold in the bathroom and freedom in the air. I get a job as a receptionist that turns into an admin role. I start therapy after a series of panic attacks I describe to my GP as, "I think I'm just stressed," and she writes "possible childhood trauma" on my referral. My therapist, Lena, is the first person to look at me and say, "It doesn't sound like you were crazy. It sounds like you were a child trying to survive in an unpredictable environment." I don't want to exaggerate, I tell her. They didn't beat me. We weren't trashy TV bad. It was just shouting, walking on eggshells. Mum not talking to me for days if I upset her. Dad making jokes about my weight at dinner. Normal stuff. Lena raises an eyebrow. Normal where? The truth is, it's hard to explain a childhood that doesn't have a headline. No single incident. Just 1,000 small cuts that all say the same thing. You are the problem. It's even harder when the people who made those cuts are still sending you texts like, "Picking you up Sunday, roast lamb," with heart emojis. Meanwhile, Lena keeps asking, "Where does all the hurt go when you don't say anything?" I shrug. "I write." She leans forward. "Show me." So I do. I open the Notes app on my phone and let her read little fragments. When I tell Mum I'm tired, she says, "You don't know what tired is. When I was your age." and suddenly I'm apologizing for needing sleep. Dad laughs when I flinch at his jokes, says I'm too sensitive, but he keeps making the same jokes. So who's the slow learner here? I love them. I also imagine just disappearing, moving and not giving them my new address. Is that bad? Lena reads quietly, occasionally nodding. Have you ever shown this to anyone else? No, the word comes out sharper than I intend. God, no. If they read this. I trail off, picturing Mum's face, the way she can pull guilt out of thin air. What if strangers read it? She asks. I hesitate. Strangers. People who don't know you, she clarifies. Sometimes it helps to have your reality reflected back by people who aren't invested in keeping the story the same. This is how, one boring Tuesday night, I end up on Reddit. I'm not going to name the sub, but you can guess the type. People venting about parents who made them the family scapegoat and now call them ungrateful. I scroll for hours, reading post after post that feels uncomfortably like home. Different details, same themes, invalidation, guilt. We did our best. Weaponized, we kept a roof over your head. Someone writes, my mum says, don't write about me in therapy. As if I'm publishing her biography. Someone else comments, they can't own your memories. That sentence sits in my chest like a burning coal. That night, I make an account with a throwaway username and post for the first time. Just a small thing, I tell myself. An experiment. I write about the time Mum found my diary and made me read it out loud to her, line by line, then grounded me for lying about how alone I felt. I changed the town name, the age, the context, even the gender of me in the story, but I don't change the part where she said, "You want something to cry about? I'll give you something to cry about." The post blows up more than I expect. People comment things like, "This was abuse and you deserved privacy and no wonder you're in therapy." One person writes, "My mum did almost exactly this. Took me years to trust anyone." I sit there, phone glowing on my duvet in the dark, reading these comments with my heart in my throat. Part of me wants to argue with them, defend her. The other part feels an almost dizzy relief. Strangers believe me. They weren't there and they still recognize the pattern. It becomes a habit, coping mechanism, double life. I write little essays about growing up in a house where the mood changed with the sound of the garage door. I talk about how love always came with a ledger. Every meal, every school uniform item, every lift to sport counted and recounted in arguments. I never used their names. I swap details. Dad becomes an uncle in one story. Mum becomes a grandmother in another. I'm careful. Careful enough that I convince myself they'd never recognize themselves even if they did stumble across it. Because what are the odds? They barely know how to update their phones. You see where this is going. A few months into this anonymous truth-telling hobby, I get a text from my cousin Emma. Emma, hey, random question. Is this you? Screenshot of my most recent post, cropped but still clearly mine. My stomach drops. I stare at the screenshot like maybe, if I look hard enough, I'll see someone else. The post is about a mother who uses crying as a weapon. I recognize the phrases I agonized over. Me, why would you think that? Emma, it just sounds like you. The jokey bits, the way you describe stuff. Also the thing about the broken plate. You told me that. I feel weirdly exposed. Like I've been walking around naked for months and only now noticed. Me, please don't send this to anyone. Emma, I won't. I just wanted to check you were okay. Some of it is rough. Me, yeah, I'm working on it. Emma, proud of you. Seriously, I should have deactivated right then. Changed usernames, scrubbed what I could. Instead, I told myself Emma is trustworthy and closed the app, shoving the whole interaction into the mental drawer labeled "Deal with later." Later arrives about 3 weeks after that, on that Thursday night with the iPad on the table. Mum opens with, "So, we read your little stories." My mouth goes dry. What? She taps the screen with a perfectly manicured nail. This, she says, this filth. About a mother who ruins birthdays and calls her daughter names and reads her diary. Dad lets out an ugly little laugh. Anonymous, my arse. he says. You might as well have put our first and last names on there. I sit down because my knees feel like someone swapped them for jelly. How did you even find that? Emma, Mum says shortly. She showed her mum, who showed me. Don't look at me like that. If you don't want people to see it, don't put it on the internet. Of all the ways I imagined this going, I did not foresee Emma's mum, of all people, being the vector. I make a note to scream into a pillow about that later. I changed details. I say, the words tumbling over themselves. I never used your names. No one who doesn't know us would know it's you. But we know, Dad snaps. And now half the world knows what a horrible father you think I am. It's not half the world, I mutter automatically, then immediately want to kick myself because now is not the time for pedantry. Don't you dare make jokes, Mum says. Her voice is shaking. Do you have any idea how it feels to read strangers calling me a monster? A narcissist? Saying I should be in jail? I do, actually. I picture my own chest, heavy and tight as I scrolled, feeling guilty and relieved at the same time. I don't say that. I never told anyone to attack you, I say. I didn't even expect anyone to read it. You wrote it, Dad says. You fed them. It's my life. I say louder than I mean to. My voice cracks on the last word. Those things happened to me, not the internet. I needed to talk about it. Talk to us, Mum says, and there's something almost desperate in her tone. Why didn't you come to us instead of this? She gestures at the screen like it's grown mold. I laugh before I can stop myself. It's a short, harsh sound. I've tried, I say. Every time I bring up something from the past, you say I'm overreacting, or you don't remember, or you start crying about how you were the worst mother in the world until I end up comforting you. I can't get 2 sentences in before it becomes about your feelings. That's not fair, she whispers. Maybe not, I say, but it's true. Dad leans forward, planting his elbows on the table. So you just go online and tell a bunch of losers that we abused you? He says. You grew up with a roof, food, holidays, Christmas presents, 2 parents who stayed together while everyone else is divorced, and this is how you repay us? There's the ledger. It always comes out eventually. I haven't used the word abused. I say, even though it's crossed my mind as I've read other people's stories. I said you shouted. I said you made me feel small. I said you read my diary. Those are facts. Your feelings aren't facts, he says, his favorite line. Me reading your diary one time is hardly a crime, Mum adds. I was worried about you. That's what mothers do. One time, I ask, incredulous. Mum, it was constant. You'd quote my diary back at me in fights. You'd tell me I was ungrateful for writing that I felt alone. She flinches. I don't remember it that way, she says. Of course you don't, I reply before I can swallow it. You don't have to. That was your coping. Forget and move on. Except it all stayed with me. Can't we just deal with this privately? She says then, softer. The command is gone. Now it's pleading. Delete them. Take the stories down. Don't write about us anymore. Please. Parents pleaded, don't write about us? And I smiled, knowing I already had. Changing names, not patterns. The smile wasn't smug. It was small and tired and came with a wave of sadness so strong I actually felt a little dizzy. Those posts saved me, I say, and my voice cracks on the last word. That probably sounds dramatic to you, but I was starting to think I made everything up. That I was crazy. Reading other people's stories, writing my own. It reminded me I wasn't alone. You have us, Mum says. You were never alone. I look at her and suddenly I'm 12 again, sitting on the end of my bed while she cries on hers about how my tone is killing her, and Dad's downstairs, TV volume up, and I'm thinking I could disappear and no one would notice until dinner. I was alone in it, I say. I didn't have anyone saying, yeah, that was messed up. I had you saying, you're too sensitive, and Dad saying, we turned out fine. Dad sighs like I'm being deliberately obtuse. We didn't have therapy back then, he says. We got on with it. You should be grateful we didn't do worse. It's a bizarre bar to set. Be grateful we could have hurt you more and didn't. So what happens now? He continues. You keep writing? You keep telling strangers what a nightmare your parents are? Are you proud of yourself? I stare down at my hands. My thumb has found a hangnail and is worrying it to the edge of pain. I'm not proud or unproud, I say. I'm just trying to survive my own head. By destroying our reputation? Mom asks. Who is going to connect that anonymous post to you? Ask. Honestly, your church friends don't even know what Reddit is. The only people who know are the ones who already know what you're like behind closed doors. That lands. I see it in Dad's jaw tightening, in Mom's sharp inhale. For a second, the mask slips and I see the truth. They're not worried about the neighbors. They're worried about me naming what they've convinced themselves didn't happen the way I remember. Please, Mom says again, and now she's crying. Don't write about us. Don't turn us into villains. And here's the messy part. I don't think of them as cartoon villains. I think of them as two flawed, damaged people who had kids before they had any idea what to do with their own pain. I think of my dad, exhausted from double shifts, still offering to drive me to school in the rain. I think of my mom working 3 jobs when my biological father bailed. I think of my dad teaching me to ride a bike, my mom slipping me extra roast potatoes when I failed a test. I also think of being screamed at for leaving a cup in the sink, of being told, "At your age I had a baby, stop complaining about exams," of hearing, "I should have never had kids," more times than I can count. I'm not turning you into anything, I say finally. I'm telling my stories, my version. You're in them because you were there. What if my friends see? Mom whispers. What if your friends knew you refused to talk to me for 3 weeks because I said I was tired? I shoot back, then instantly regret how harsh it sounds. She recoils like I've slapped her. One hand flies to her chest. You really hate me, she says. I don't, I say, and my voice breaks. That's the worst part. If I hated you, this would be easier. I love you, and you hurt me, and those 2 things are both true, and writing is the only place I can hold them at the same time without exploding. The room goes quiet again. The fridge hums. Somewhere outside, a car door slams. Dad clears his throat. You're an adult now, he says. We can't stop you from doing anything. But understand this. If you keep broadcasting our private life, don't expect us to keep pretending everything is okay. I know this is supposed to be a threat. It lands as something else. A weird, backhanded permission slip. Because I'm tired of pretending everything is okay. I don't, I say, expect you to pretend. I'm done pretending too. We end the conversation with nothing resolved. Mom oscillates between crying and accusing me of choosing the internet over my family. Dad goes quiet in that punishing way he has. At one point he says, "We did our best." Like that's a full stop, not a comma. Before I leave, Mom grabs my arm. If you loved us, she says, you'd stop. If you're expecting a satisfying moment where I pull my arm away and say something badass like, if you loved me, you'd listen, sorry, real life is messier. I just say, I do love you, because it's true, and I need to think, because that's also true. Later, in Lena's office, I sob so hard my chest hurts. Maybe they're right, I say. Maybe I am betraying them. Maybe I'm exploiting them for karma points. Do you write for karma? She asks. No, I say immediately. Half the time I don't even remember to check the numbers. I write because if I keep the stories inside, they chew holes in me. Has writing helped you? She asks. Besides this fallout? Yes, I admit. It's not even close. More than anything else. Seeing, I believe you, from strangers did something I didn't even know I needed. She nods. Then the question isn't, are you betraying them? She says. It's, are you willing to abandon yourself again to keep them comfortable? You've been doing that for 29 years. I stare at my hands. The hangnail from that night is now a small scab. What if I anonymize more? I say. Change more details. Write about feelings without specifics. That's a strategy, she says. But remember, their discomfort isn't proof you're wrong. It's just proof you're doing something different. I don't have a neat answer yet. I've taken some posts down, ones that felt a bit too raw, too identifiable. Not because they demanded it, but because on reflection, I wasn't ready for those particular wounds to be stared at by anyone else. I've left others up. I've written new ones, including this one, about the night they found my anonymous life. I'm sure if they ever stumbled on this, they'd say, "See? You learned nothing. You're still writing about us." And they'd be half right. I am still writing about them, but I'm also writing about me. About the kid who hid her notebooks under her mattress and the adult who now hides her Reddit icon in a folder on her phone. Parents pleaded, "Don't write about us." Like silence could retroactively make my nervous system forget, but the stories are already inked into me. In my flinch when someone raises their voice, in my instinct to apologize 3 times before I ask for help, in the way I brace when my phone lights up with "Mom." Changing names doesn't change patterns, but naming patterns out loud in black and white has started to change me. Maybe one day I'll find a way to talk to them without a screen between us and not lose myself in the process. Maybe they'll pick up a book about adult children and actually read it. Maybe they won't. In the meantime, I write, I'm careful where I can be, ruthless where I have to be, honest more than I've ever been in that house. They can ask me not to write about them. They can plead, threaten, cry, but they can't unwrite what already happened. Those pages exist whether I put them on a website or not. At least out here, under yet another fake name, I get to be the one holding the pen.